I think the most important thing they can do is to have the patient feel that they're being cared for. And their fears are not warranted in my practice because they're never going to feel pain. They're always going to be well informed. And then this is the key. I'm collaborative. I don't tell the patient what we're going to do. I tell the patient what their options are. And I said, I'm not going to decide what to do. I'm going to educate you, and you're going to make a decision based upon the information. I said, you can walk out. You don't have to do anything. I said, you could do a lot. You could do a little.
You know, in healthcare, I don't think doctors realize just how much they can learn by implementing hospitality.
Right.
Because then you actually understand what the other person needs instead of it being about an agenda or a procedure or insurance codes. I think this is where insurance has corrupted medicine.
Now, they have no idea whether I'm any good. I could be completely incompetent. They would not know. What do they know? That they're nice, that my staff is nice, my team is nice, that the office is neat and clean. You can eat off the floor, that there are fresh flowers everywhere, nice music. You know, is there's aromatherapy going on, and they're called by name.
And so it's so good to have you here, Dr. Michael Sonick, and I'm glad we could connect on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. We've been talking about it for a few years.
And here we are, and you've written the book. And what's been the biggest difference that you noticed from the beginning of writing the book to now?
You know, for me personally, or for my profession?
Yeah, I think both.
Yeah. Well, it's for me personally, it's clarified a lot of things that I've been doing my whole career. So I've been practicing for close to 40 years, and I've been talking about the concepts in the book, which are not concepts that were taught in medical or dental school. It's really hospitality and medicine and dentistry. And people say, you know, why would you talk about that? And, you know, most of the concepts that I have in the book come from, you know, not from healthcare, because healthcare, we're procedure oriented. Most of the concepts come from the restaurant industry and the hospitality industry. We were talking about Ritz-Carlton earlier, and they put on a whole course on hospitality in the Four Seasons. And, you know, a lot of my concepts come from the restaurant business. But for me personally, it sort of clarified and crystallized a lot of things that I've done organically. So, I mean, because I'm from the hospitality industry, I worked in restaurants and was in the service industry, you know, growing up. And over the course of my career, I've always been involved in that. I remember when a patient came into a clinic I was working in. It wasn't even a clinic. I was a resident still in my residency program. I brought in cassette tapes for patients to listen to while we're doing the procedures. And I brought in dark sunglasses. Today, you have to put on glasses for a patient. But back then, I said, it'll protect their eyes, will darken the room. It'll give them a better experience. And I thought that was important. And then when I started buying artwork, and I'd carry artwork around with me, and I put it on the wall in the clinics because I wanted the patients to have a good experience. So it's something I've always done. And it made me very conscious of the skills that I was using that I could not really explain. I don't know if you've ever felt this. You do something, it's natural to you. You're just really good at it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's almost like it's unconscious. And then if someone said, well, how did you do that? You have to sort of think back. And as a teacher, you know, we're both teachers. I think when you teach something, then you have to really understand it. And so I started to teach the concepts of hospitality. And as I taught them, I realized I didn't know exactly what I was doing. So I actually created various formulas and various algorithms for doing what I do. And I think that's the biggest clarity that's come to me is I now know exactly what I do. So I see everything around me. I think what's been really helpful is for my team, because my team is my most important asset. My team understands all these concepts now too. And so we go over it on a daily basis and we say, well, what happened? What was good? What was positive? What could we make better? And then we get the feedback from my patients, because my patients, I mean, every day someone says, I've never seen a great team like this. You know, why is your team so great? It's really nice to hear. And I said, well, I hire great people. I smooth it over. I didn't say we have a whole training program that takes a while for them to get there, but I just hire good people, which is a big part of it. And professionally, people are talking about it now. You know, my profession, I'm getting the word out there. I probably give a keynote twice a month on this topic somewhere. And
Um,
so I'm getting the information out there. The problem that I have is that, because I'm a surgeon. So if I teach a surgical technique, people go, okay, I can charge X dollars for that technique and I can make X dollars an hour by doing that. If I teach some of the concepts from the book, I go, it's nice to have a nice, spa-like feeling in the reception area. You want to be really nice to people. You got to give them enough time. You got to answer the phone properly. Do all those other things. Well, how much money am I going to make? And well, I can't monetize that. I can't monetize the value of being nice to people,
yeah.
but almost to a fault. You will make more money if you're nicer to people. You know.
Well, it's crazy because, referrals. I mean, you've been in the industry for decades, and you're a referral based practice. I mean,
Right.
you couldn't handle all the volume of people that were sent to you because of the amount of care and the hospitality you put into it. And so yeah, treating people, not patients. Your book is something that I think is very timely because if we look at what's changed in healthcare now, people are now selective. They're willing to pay out of pocket for an experience
Right.
that's better than what they're receiving. And so, what kind of impact do you want the book to make?
Well, my moonshot
Yeah.
is to have doctors, not only doctors, but all healthcare providers be taught the value of providing over the top customer service to their patients so that they can be hospitable to them and give them a good experience. You know, you and I both have had a lot of good meals, eaten a lot of good restaurants. The quality of food's important, but I think if I asked you, Reagan, what are the top 10 meals you had in restaurants, you would go back to the experience that you had. It's like, oh God, they did this, they did this. I went to one of the best restaurants in the world is in New York City. It's called 11 Madison Park.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you know that restaurant? Because
I just know the book Unreasonable Hospitality. We have the whole team has a copy of it and we've studied it.
Yeah, because I saw that on your website, Unreasonable Healthcare. It was the
Yeah.
word unreasonable. So I was wondering if you had seen that. So I ate in that restaurant about 3 weeks ago. And
Oh,
Will
wow.
Guidara, who wrote the book Unreasonable Hospitality, he sold his half of the business to Will Human, who was the chef. And they had a difference of opinion. Actually, Will has gone into a different area. It's now vegan. And Will
Oh,
meditates and does a lot of yoga and spent time in India. And so I think he's gone into different directions. So it wasn't a vegan restaurant when they were there. But when I went back into the restaurant a few weeks ago, even though Will Guidara wasn't there, the experience that I got was unbelievable. Now I just ate some vegetables. Okay, well, the food was
yep.
good, the vegetables were really good, and I asked if Will was still working there. They go, no. And when they found out that I asked for him, they came over to my table. And I said, I'm sorry he's not here anymore, but we try to bring the same level of service to the customers. And before I know it, I'm in the kitchen. I have a private table in the kitchen. I'm having a meal, part of the meal in the kitchen. They gave me 2 or 3 extra gifts before I left. And I was nobody to them. I was just, somebody that just walked in there. And
Wow.
so that book's a great book. My book is very similar to that book in terms of it's written with stories through my industry. The only
Yeah.
difference is I have a periodontal practice. I don't have the most successful restaurant in the world. So,
Yeah, but
but yeah,
if you think of some of the most terrifying experiences of our life is going to the dentist or going to the
right,
periodontist, where it's like, I'm going to get surgery on my mouth. This is
right.
terrifying. And so, what would you say the most important thing that doctors can do to put their patients at ease when they're undergoing a procedure?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the most important thing they can do is to have the patient feel that they're being cared for. And most of them feel vulnerable. And so, how do you take that vulnerability away? I think the thing that I do most for them, and this is, and yeah, I'm sure you see this too when patients come in to see you. They're nervous. They don't know what to expect. They don't know
Yeah.
what you're going to tell them. So I always tell interesting stories that they can relate to because I don't talk to them about procedures. I mean, if they want to know. I mean, if you're an engineer, you're going to want to know everything. They're going to want to
Sure.
know every detail. But most patients don't want to know that. People say to me, well, it must be, what if you got a lawyer in there? Are you nervous? I go, no, lawyers are very easy to treat because they get a gut feeling immediately. They either trust you or don't trust you. It's all based upon trust. So how do you develop the trust? And because people are afraid of the pain, they're afraid of the cost, they're afraid of the outcome, they're afraid of how long it's going to take.
Mm.
They don't know your experience level. They don't know if you're any good. Um, I mean, I have a lot of, I have thousands of 5-star reviews. I've written, 4 textbooks. Okay, big deal. I don't care. You walk in there, if you're going in to see a surgeon, they're going to pick up a scalpel and put it into your mouth. It doesn't matter how experienced they are, okay? Because this is your mouth that's happening, that's going into. If I'm having something done, back surgery, hip surgery, whatever, oral surgery, it's very scary, especially oral surgery, because in oral surgery, you're really invading them and you're close. And most of the time, the patients are semi-awake. So what do? And this is what I say to my patients when they first come in. I said, the most difficult part of your procedure is already over. You walked into this office because this data for going to see a periodontist is only 1 out of every 8 patients referred actually makes the appointment because people neglect themselves. I mean, you know that, right? You have all these people come in to see you at age what? What's your average age? It's probably 60.
Yeah, it's about 50. Yeah.
50?
Yep.
Well, that's younger. My age is 65. So my average new patient is 65 that's neglected themselves and had nothing but bad experiences. And then they come in and they want me to fix them. And they don't want it to cost anything. They don't want it to take any time. And they don't have to want to go through any procedures or pain and suffering. So that's why they've avoided coming to see me.
Yep.
So what I'll tell them, as I said, something? I know it took a lot to come in here, but I will guarantee you this, that you are in the right place. Now, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's good verbiage, though. Said you are in the right place. As soon as I say that, they tend to relax. And then I share 1 or 2 stories about my own experience because I've had a lot of dental work done. I've had other medical procedures done. Um, I have a full mouth rehabilitation. I've lost 9 teeth. I've been in 2 severe bike accidents with my teeth knocked out. I have 2 stents in my heart, even though I'm fit and keep myself in shape because I'm, genetically predisposed to that. And so I can share a lot of my own experiences. And I had a phenomenal experience when I went through my dentistry and when I went through my cardiovascular surgery. It was great care that I got. And I feel, well taken care of. So how do I do that? I tell them this. I tell them the story about the Wizard of Oz. I said, lion, Scarecrow, Tin Man, they're walking down there and they're going to go see the wizard because they all want the heart, the brain, courage. And they're working with Dorothy and they get down to the Wizard of Oz and guess what they find? Behind the curtain, it's just a guy. I go, I'm just a guy. All right. So I'm going to pull back the curtain and I pull back the curtain and depending upon who they are, if they want to see what I'm going to do, I'll just pull up the surgical slides. I go, this is what I'm going to do. And it's like, oh, that's what you're going to do? That's not that bad. It's never as bad as they think because we tend to make things worse. We tend to be full of fear and we always make the future scarier than it really is,
Yeah.
and we both work with somebody that says, create a really good future, right? You got to make your future more positive than the past. And that's what people do. They come in there because they're afraid and their fears are not warranted in my practice because they're never going to feel pain. They're always going to be well informed. And then this is the key. I'm collaborative. I don't tell the patient what we're going to do. I tell the patient what their options are. And I said, I'm not going to decide what to do. I said, I'm going to educate you and you're going to make a decision based upon the information. I said, you can walk out. You don't have to do anything. I said, you could do a lot. You could do a little. And you'll make the decision. And I say to them that you'll drive the bus of your own care. And once you do that, they become empowered. So in summary, I tell them that they're in the right place. I explain to them everything. I give them information so that they're educated. And then I give them the power and the authority to make their own decision because they think I'm going to make it. And then that scares them away. So 90% of the patients that walk into my office go through, major reconstruction. And that's a pretty high percentage for what I do. If I'm talking too much, let me know, but you can stop me.
No, this is great.
Okay.
Yes. No,
Because
this is awesome.
there was a top I'm not going to use the name, but a plastic surgeon who also reads Unreasonable Hospitality. He reads those books, and he has their whole team every month. He sits with a book, and they try to get the author to come in. So out of the blue, I get a text, and he said, "I just read your book. It spoke to me. Will you come in and speak to my office?" And I did. And he's got a phenomenal office. I won't tell you the location because it's a pretty well-known location, but he's probably the busiest plastic surgeon in New York City. People fly in from all over the world. But his case closure rate, guess what it is? It's 10%. 90% of the
10%.
people, 10, and he's busy.
Oh,
So he does a lot of marketing, but he only has 10% closure rate. And he
crazy.
told me that he's got to write a check. He's got to refund a patient once a month. He has to write a check because they're unhappy with the results. Now, plastic surgery is more difficult than what you and I do in terms of there's an emotional component and it's subjective. But that's pretty high that you have to write a check every month to somebody because they're unhappy with it. And what did I see? He loved my book. But when I went into the office, I saw it wasn't run. It had a very nice waiting room. It had an elevator that opened up into the waiting room. It had a full floor of a major building in New York City. The bathroom was beautiful. But then when I went back into the operating area, boxes along the hall, I could see they had outgrown the space, but it wasn't neat and clean and organized.
Ah,
And I saw how they managed it. And I think what you have to do in order to be extremely successful in almost anything, whether it's medicine or whether it's any sort of marketing or any sort of human connectivity, you have to be extremely vulnerable and you have to show exactly who you are. And that takes a while to do because when I was a young practitioner, I wasn't that vulnerable. I tried to hide behind the cloak of being, I'm a doctor, like I'm a surgeon. Now it's just like I'm a regular guy, that just happens to have a skill set and knowledge in something that you don't know. And that's
mhm.
really the only thing I really have tremendous knowledge in because I've been doing it for 40 years. Like I don't, there's a guy here looking at my TV. I don't know how that works. Nobody, I don't think anybody did. He didn't even know.
Yeah, no kidding. He's like, I've got a computer that knows.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, they it's amazing. Very few people do know. It's the 2% rule. 2% of anybody knows what they're doing. That's what my number is. And I actually think it's 0.2%. I have a patient that's a Nobel laureate, and she is the world authority in her field. I'm not going to mention the field because I don't want to violate HIPAA. And
sure.
she's 82 years old. She graduated medical school at 23. She's brilliant. So's her husband. And we always go back and forth. She's very, I mean, being that brilliant, she doesn't believe anything I say. She's always giving me a hard time, and we have that type of relationship. And she came in one day, and we're talking. I said, "You know something?" I said, "I came up with the 2% rule." I said, "2% of the doctors really know what's going on." And without any hesitation, this 82-year-old woman who's got her own wing at Yale turns to me. She goes, "You think it's that high?" And I'm thinking like 2% is that high? She goes, "I think it's 0.2%. And the more I think about it, maybe she's right. You call a plumber. If they call you back, they're in the top 2%, right? I mean, do you have a
That's
good
it.
plumber out there? It's hard to get a good plumber or
Yep.
good electrician. I have a great electrician. I don't have a good plumber yet. So working on that. We're working on it for about 40 years.
Well, and I think, in healthcare, I don't think doctors realize just how much they can learn by implementing hospitality.
Right.
Because then you actually understand what the other person needs instead of it being about an agenda or a
Right.
procedure or insurance codes. I think this is where insurance has corrupted medicine in large part because doctors are trying to check off the box to see if you qualify for any kind of care. And if
Right.
you don't, they're kind of like, well, I can't make any money off of you because there's nothing medically necessary right now. So this is why a lot of
Yeah.
people get the 5-minute visits. Doctors look at your labs and they're like, well, everything looks normal,
Right.
as far as like what your insurance will cover. So come back when things are worse. But
Yeah, that's true. That started back in the 70s, when the auto worker union, I think it was United Auto Workers, came up with the first insurance plan. Yeah, and they gave him $1,000 a year back then, and it was a good benefit. But then it corrupted it, and then the government got involved. So when the government gets involved, an insurance company comes involved, you have a big operation, and it's a mess. And I remember when I first got out of dental school, I was talking to some of the physicians, and they go, "Yeah, we're making a lot of money. We just build insurance. We just build them insurance." Yeah,
yeah,
and they did. And then what happened was they turned the tables. They go, yeah, we're paying you, but we're paying you less,
Yeah.
and then we're only going to pay you this. It's amazing. Some of the cardiovascular surgeons, what they get paid for an operation, something is very, very, very little now. And so some of the professions can game it, like in cardiology, they can test you to death. And so they can still make a good living. But if you're a surgeon, it's harder to make a living right now. Even orthopedic surgeons, they don't get that much reimbursement for a hip replacement, but they'll get a lot of reimbursement to have the MRI, which they're not allowed to own. So they put it into another corporation that owns it. And they have all sorts of, a lot of these guys, they game it. And it's unfortunate. Dermatologists kill it because people want that. They want to have nice looking skin. Plastic surgeons, if they're good, they can kill it. But there's a lot of competition there. Probably dermatology is the most successful specialty because it's out of the realm of insurance. In dentistry, there's an interesting fact. 95% of all dentists were insurance based. COVID came along and it went down to 90. So they doubled the amount of people that don't take insurance because during COVID, they found they can give good care because a lot of dentists wouldn't come in. They can give good care and people would come in and pay for it. So I've been non-insurance based my whole practice. And it took me a long time to build the practice. And then my partner came in and he wasn't busy. And they go, well, let's take insurance. So I become busier. And my wife, who was running the practice at that time, she says, no way. And she was in sales business. She was in sales. She goes, we're not going to do that. That is going to take us so much time. And he never did. Now he's booked 3 months in advance. And now my newest partner, she's booked and we've never taken insurance. And I have two, younger people, in practice, and most people in town do take insurance. But we still get benefits from the insurance company, but they don't pay for quality care. That's the problem.
Well, and
a patient comes in and say, well, what will insurance cover? I go, what did insurance pay for your shoes? It's like we've created a culture where people say, if insurance doesn't pay for it, I'm not going to have it done. So I'm going to give myself poor care. There's a joke that, in Europe, people will pay for spas, but in America, we pay for hospitals. And I think this, 90% of all of the money that we spend in medical care is in, I think, the last year of life. It's some crazy number like that.
Yeah.
In our GNP, we get 17 to 18% of every dollar that we spend in goes to healthcare. And then we get about 20% goes to the military and about another 30% goes to debt. So we got a bit of a mess going on here.
Well, and the growth trajectory, I mean, it's out of control in the next 10 years. I mean, that's probably the biggest risk in the United States economy is just the healthcare expenses.
Yeah, because people like me, us boomers getting older.
You damn boomers, come on, don't get older.
Yeah, we're not dying. And we're going out there and getting peptides.
Exactly.
We're doing longevity stuff. Actually, very few people are doing that.
But the ones who are, I mean, it's funny because the boomer generations, the ones that you and I know, the entrepreneurs, they are getting healthier. They're going to live longer. So what do you think would be the biggest change in, society? What if every doctor's office read your book, Treating People, Not Patients, and actually implemented the principles? What kind of transformation would you see happening?
Well, you'd have happier people. There's some data I've read recently that 50% of all physicians and dentists wouldn't do it again if they knew the level of stress. So the level of stress is very high when you're procedure oriented because you're running from room to room. Yeah. And you look. I mean, when you're a nice guy, you're almost always in a good mood, at least on the outside, but you always show niceness. You're always cordial and nice. And the world probably looks nicer to you than it does to someone who's always angry. Yeah. And, when you walk into a local, here, you and I both travel a lot. Go into an airport in a pleasant mood, doesn't things, they give you the seat, they give you some extra pretzels or come on in. Okay, no problem. And I see people who are in lousy moods. I was coming back from Toronto once. There was this guy in a lousy mood. He was double masked. Okay, he was screaming at the person behind the plexiglass. I'm watching him, and I didn't have a ticket. I was trying to get out of Toronto, and I didn't have a ticket because because I was trying to get in an earlier flight. And if you missed the last flight out of Toronto, I've slept in Toronto airport twice on the floor. I have some funny stories with that. But anyway, if you can't get out of there at night, you're stuck. So I wanted to get on an early flight. So I walk over and I'm watching this guy. He's so angry. And the people are just looking at him like, all right, I'm just going to watch you be angry, but I'm not getting involved. This is a true story. It took about 15 to 20 seconds. I said, I'm sorry, I'd like to get into an earlier flight. And I go, do you have anything? In first class? The guy looks, doesn't even talk to me. He just hands me a ticket, first class ticket. I walk back. I walk onto a plane 2 hours earlier, and that guy's still there yelling. It was just amazing. I said, maybe I should never yell at people, which I don't do. So I think what will happen if you are more pleasant to patients, they're more pleasant to you. And, I'm in the Northeast where people aren't that nice, in Connecticut, which is probably the least friendly place in the country. But you come into my office, you wouldn't know you're in Connecticut. You think you're in, the deep South or something. Hey, people are nice. My team is so nice to the patients, and they're nice. And every day my team is getting lunch or gifts or something coming in, and they're getting good care. And they're referring people because this is every day they say, you're the only doctor I trust. Now, they have no idea whether I'm any good. I could be completely incompetent. They would not know. What do they know? That they're nice.
Yeah.
That my staff is nice, my team is nice, that the office is neat and clean, you can eat off the floor, that there are fresh flowers everywhere, nice music, is this aromatherapy going on, and they're called by name. There's a picture of them at the front desk. When the patient walks in, they'll say, hey, nice to see you, Reagan. You're a little early for your appointment. Would you mind? Do you want a cup of coffee or some tea or something? What would you like? Oh, you're going to be here waiting for your wife if she's getting surgery. There's a private office you can use. Those type of little things, they take nothing. They don't cost anything. And then what happens is they're under less stress. Now, when one of my team under stress, new patient calls because they're ready to fight. They're ready to fight. What insurance do you have? What do you get? I'm not talking to you. They're so mean. And when I walk in, and people sometimes say, got a really mean patient down there. I go, I don't need to know. All I need to do is walk in there, and within 2 or 3, literally 60 seconds, they're okay. Now, I have an advantage. I'm a man, and I'm a doctor. Okay, so they're usually going to be nice, but they're not all nice to me when I walk in there. So I think the stress level lowers. Now, you know about stress and disease. Okay, stress does lead to disease. I mean, there's no doubt about that. This is something you probably don't know. It's a little interesting, and your listeners don't know this. There's a condition called trench mouth. It's called acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis. It was given a name during the Napoleonic Wars because they dug trenches, and during that time, a lot of the soldiers, their gums would get really sore. It looked like they had scurvy. Well, under stress, that will happen to some people. Now, where do I see it? People studying for final exams, not sleeping, doing amphetamines to stay up all night and try to study. They get stressed out. They're not brushing their teeth, and they come in with these really inflamed gums. Now, what we found is that there's a relationship between the T cells and the B cells that mirrors AIDS when these people are stressed. So when if you have acute, AID, acquired immune deficiency, what will happen if you're active is that you'll get punched out lesions in your mouth. Now, you don't see this much anymore because we can control it. But back in the early 80s, I used to see a lot of it with my AIDS patients that would come in. Their mouths would be a mess. And that was because there was a relationship between the T and B cells that became altered. What we found was that when these patients who have trench mouth, there's a difference in the T and B cells, and they're under tremendous stress. Once the stress goes away, we show them how to brush and floss, put them on an antibiotic for a week, then a reversal happens. So there's an example of actually psychosomatic stress in dentistry that happens. People grind their teeth. They don't heal well. If my patients have less stress, they are going to have a better experience. They're going to heal better. One of the things that I do is I give every patient of mine my business card that has my cell phone and my personal email. So if you have a problem, just call me. That makes them feel that I'm there for them, and which I'm going to be there for them, and that they have someone that they can call. Now, they don't abuse it. My phone's not ringing off the hook. It's rang 4 times during this podcast, but they're all from other doctors calling me. But no patients have called me. But they can when they want. Well, how do you think patients feel if they know that they have the doctor's number? But more importantly, the patient's spouse, because a lot of spouses can't handle blood. They go, oh boy, I don't want to talk about it. Call me or call my team. So that makes a huge difference. So joy goes up, happiness goes up,
Yeah.
healing is improved. And there's so much data, the data about that. There's so much data. If you decrease stress, you have a better life. It's one of the four things you got to do: diet, exercise, sleep, and mindfulness, which is stress reduction. And they all sort of relate. I talked to my daughter about this weekend. She was saying, I can't lose any weight. She goes, I think I have post-COVID syndrome. Like I can't lose any weight. So I had her write down everything she ate for 7 days, and she actually did it. And I looked at it; it was very obvious what her problem was. But and I went through her diet, and then I went through exercise. I said, you can have the same diet and lose weight, but you're going to really have to increase your exercise about 3 or 4 hours a day. And then I said, and you got to sleep. She goes, well, I can't sleep because I'm so stressed. And should I take melatonin and Benadryl? I go, hold on a second. How's your mindfulness exercise? I said, you eat better, you become more mindfulness, you do meditation. Because I can't meditate, I'm going too much. I said, it's all related. And so
Yeah.
all this stuff is related. I'm a periodontist, I work on teeth, but it's not just teeth, it's the whole body. So I
Right.
refer patients of mine to other healthcare specialists. I refer them to acupuncturists. I have an acupuncturist, which you are, right? You're an acupuncturist.
Oh
I
yeah.
see an acupuncturist every Thursday, 9 to 10 o'clock. I've had no back pain in 6 years. And I've had
Love it.
back pain from the age of 20 until the age of 60 something. But I see her every
Yeah.
week. Her and yoga knocked out the back pain. I refer 2 patients a week to her, and because she's that good. So the best people out there, I mean, I refer patients to orthopedic surgeons. I refer patients to psychologists. I refer patients to people, hypnotists, so they can quit smoking.
Yep.
It's all related. And of course, we haven't talked about the oral systemic link, which is a big deal, getting people healthy. And doctors, I went to medical school for 2 years. You know how much time we had in dentistry? 1 hour. We had 1 hour in dentistry. That was it. We didn't, the doctors
Wow.
are not informed, especially for certain indications like pregnancy. If you're pregnant, you have to see the dentist because you get pregnancy gingivitis, which leads to increased inflammation. That inflammation goes through your whole body. And guess what? It's in your bloodstream, and there's a baby
Yeah.
in there
Baby
too.
gets stressed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and every heart attack, I mean, number one killer in our country is still heart disease.
it
And
is.
every heart attack, you can see a transmigration of bacteria from the mouth that
Right.
tend to stress out the heart. So
Yeah, there's
fascinating.
actually data. I mean, I don't know if you may not know this, but there's a bacteria in the mouth called Bacteroides melanogenesis. It crosses through the blood-brain barrier, and it creates an enzyme called gingipane. And
Mm.
gingipane leads to inflammation, and it gets into the brain. And when there's gingipane there, leads to Alzheimer's. Now, it's not proven yet, but they looked at 3 groups of people. Um, all had Alzheimer's, and all of them had periodontal disease. And one group they didn't do anything with. The other group they treated with a periodontal therapy. They got great care, and the other group had mild care. They didn't give great care, and they found that there was now the Alzheimer's didn't go away, but it stopped progressing in the people that good periodontal health. So that was published
Mm.
in Japan about 2 years ago. And there's a
Wow.
lot more data on that. And I get the Journal of Periodontology, and I get it once a month. Every month, there's one article showing a relationship between periodontal disease, either rheumatoid arthritis, dementia, stroke, heart disease for sure, because the bacteria in your mouth go into your bloodstream, and they get into the atherosclerotic plaque. There's a book, I don't know if you've ever read it, and it's called Beat the Heart Attack Gene by Amy Doneen and Bradley Bale, Dr. Bradley Bale.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they are both physicians, and they won't see a patient unless they see a periodontist and get a full workup, because
Wow.
they feel it's that important. So that's something that is really, we're just scratching the surface on. And most dentists don't talk to physicians. I talk to physicians every day. I mean, it's really important, and I mean, I don't ignore other problems that aren't in the mouth. I don't still look at the teeth. I look at
Right.
everything. It's very important.
Well, and I think this is why your work is so groundbreaking because you've been in the industry, you've worked on thousands of patients, and you actually took the time as being a very talented doctor to give us all a recipe of how we can provide better care. And I agree on the oral health. We talk about it all the time. I've got a couple of biological dentists that are right by my office that
Right.
I've kind of I don't know, hundreds of patients over the years. And I think it's something that's so important. So what's the best way for people who want to engage? I have a large group of providers that would love to connect. I want to get you on the Go Wellness circuit too and talk about the concepts. But what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, if they want, to get my book, you can get that on Amazon. I have a series of videos to teach culture. They are There's 10, 15-minute videos. It's a 3.5 hours with a complete workbook. You can go to my website, which is my name, michaelsonick.com, and you can get that there. It's inexpensive. It's like $450, and it's like it's 10, it'll be 10 1 hour blocks of training. What's expensive is getting your whole team together and going through it, but it comes with a workbook. If you want to connect with me, you can connect with me through the website or on my email. You can call me directly, 203-209-7029. I'll be happy to guide you in the right spot. I can come in and teach some of these concepts if you're interested, coach people on the phone, all that's available.
Man,
So,
well, I'm excited for you to come to Utah because I want to have you do a session with my team. So if
sure.
you can put that on the front side or back side, I'd love that.
Yeah.
And this has been phenomenal. I'd love to continue the conversation. And so everybody go to michaelsonick.com. We'll put this in the show notes. And Michael, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you, Reagan. Brother from another mother. We're coming from the same spot, always felt that
Yes.
way. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, I'm glad we could connect. And everybody, if you love the show, make sure you share it with your friends, family, and loved ones. Really appreciate you being part of our community. And thanks for joining.